Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajeem. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Assalamu-alaikum. Ji-ayanu, Pakhair-agale, Ni-hao, Chunashumme, Washmale, Ohai Gonzaimas, Guten Morgen, Hola, Bonjour, Privyet, Kaifa hal, Hale Shumachatore, Ahlan Wasalan, Marhaba, Buna, Mucho, Gracias, Swabia, Bhalli Kare, Hosh Galden. And thank you very much, everybody, for tuning into PTV World. You're certainly watching World this morning alongside a very fantastic and well-learned colleague who happens to be Miss Haja Sati. I happen to be Shahzad Hassan Khan. And we hope and pray that everybody out there is doing wonderfully well and that you're ready to kickstart your day and week with us. But first things first, hello Haja, how are you doing today?
Assalamu alaikum, and thank you so much for asking. I'm doing good. How are you?
Well, I think so far so good, alhamdulillah, since we're coming out of the weekend. You know, I'm rejuvenated, I feel excited, I feel ecstatic about my work, and I'm on top of this world.
That's nice.
But before I say anything else, I think I really need to kind of say thank you, Allah Almighty, for giving us whatever you've bestowed upon us. You know, all sorts of blessings. And we at times might not be able to say thank you quite often, but hey, you know what? You know, you're the creator, so please make sure that you keep on blessing us all. Whoever is right in front of their television screens, whether they are or whether they are not, please make sure that you do that too as well. But very quickly, Haja, what did you do over the weekend?
Okay, so, you know, before telling you about my weekend routine, I wanted to tell you that I came across this quotation that Allah gives and forgets, and we get and forget, right?
Yeah.
And this is really the case, right?
True.
So, you know, I did nothing because my laptop got some maladministrative virus or something like that, and I couldn't read anything. So I was just into binge watching on my mobile. That's very destructive, but I don't know how to come out of this addiction, you know.
Yeah, I mean, at times it is hard. And, you know, it's exactly what happened to me over the weekend too as well. Because, you know, so one, obviously I was watching a lot of seasons while being on my bed. And that's my trigger point. So whenever I'm watching television, I can fall asleep. So I was sleeping, I was waking up, and there was a lot of sleeping. And then just last night, I was like, hey, you know what? I think I've watched enough TV. Let's switch to the cell phone. And then I literally had to put it away so that I could sleep and come to work too as well. But other than that, we hope and pray that everybody's ready to get started. Have a great week ahead. Make sure that you are on top of your energies. 100% efficient and efficacy is something which is really very important. Make sure that you contribute wherever you are. But let's see how the world is doing, how Pakistan, our motherland, is doing as well. So first up, let's see what top stories do we have for you, you know, out there in 46 different countries. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, first up.
Okay, so Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, while expressing concern over the rise in the street crimes in Punjab province, directed the provincial government to take measures for the protection of lives and properties of the people. And you know what, he also chaired a meeting on of the law and order in the Lahore, and during that meeting, he was briefed on the law and order situation in the province, terror threats, as well as the measures being taken to curb this menace. And the meeting also reviewed the implementation of the steps to eliminate the sources of terror financing and relevant laws. Prime Minister appreciated the performance of law enforcement agencies regarding the fulfillment of Financial Action Task Force action plan. He also added that whole nation is united against the terrorism and stood side by side with the country's armed forces. You know, that's a very wonderful message. And of course, you know, we have been hearing this good news that Pakistan is about to come out of the, you know, grey list of the FAFT. Yes, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. And, you know, I was really very happy when I heard about it as well. And inshallah, in days to come, we will see that the economy of the country will prosper too as well. I think that the program is being resumed with IMF too as well. So the first 1 or 2 months of struggle, inshallah, will be over soon as well. But the credit definitely goes to the PML and government. So, Prime Minister, we certainly love you for the efforts you've been putting in. You haven't been catching up on your sleep too as well. Thank you very much for doing so much for the nation and people of your country as well. But moving on, now, ladies and gentlemen, since we have spoken about the Prime Minister, how he always makes sure that, you know, he's always available for people and whatever their problems are. Same goes with the Army General, Army Chief of Army Staff, when we talk about Qamar Javed Bajwa Sahab as well, because he's been awarded by one of the highest civil awards in Saudi Arabia as well.
Oh, wow.
So Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa has been awarded the King Abdulaziz Medal of Excellence for making significant contributions in defense cooperation between both the countries. The Army Chief visited Kingdom of Saudi Arabia on an official tour. During the visit, the Army Chief called on Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdul Aziz Al Saud and Chief of General Staff Saudi Armed Forces General Fayyad bin Hamid Al Rawali in Jeddah. Matters of mutual interest, bilateral defense and security cooperation, and regional peace and stability were discussed during the meeting. Wow, that's just beautiful. So congratulations, Chief of Army Staff General Qamar Javed Bajwa Sahab as well. And you truly are the Sipah Salar of the country. Thank you very much. Keep up the good work. And yes, one day probably, you can record a message for us too. Hey, Hajar and Shahzad, you guys are doing a great job too. But yes, now let's get started. Okay, I think I really need to be serious on this, and it is a very serious issue. It's a menace which exists within the society. It's a problem. A lot of people go through a lot of trouble. In fact, for parents, God forbid if they see their son or daughter being involved in it, which they are these days, the numbers is rising. Kids as old as 12 years are even involved as well. Imagine that, you can lose everything for your parents, and for your parents, you are the one. That's something which I want everybody to understand. And it will eventually give you pain for the rest of your life. God forbid if you are that one reason, one purpose of that originating pain for your parents. Please make sure that you don't do that. It's because of the fact, ladies and gentlemen, that today happens to be the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking. And when we talk about it, we really need to talk about drug abuse. We really need to talk about overdose. We really need to talk about how we really need to kind of prepare our future generations and making sure that we impart trainings to teachers, because when we talk about the education sector, I think it's overboarded with curriculum and academia and whatnot.
And it's not actually very drug resistance in its essence, because I don't think so there's any anger management courses into it, or maybe focus on the civic education for that matter, which is very necessary when it comes to fighting such kind of menace in the society.
Which is why this year around Hajar, the theme is that addressing drug challenges in health and humanitarian crisis. And not just that, imagine, so while I was growing up, what our parents did to make sure that we stayed away from, God forbid, such illnesses as well. And that is, so my father would go swimming, he would take us all along, so we were 7 siblings, alhamdulillah. You can imagine what we did in the pool. While we were so bored of swimming, you'd be like, okay, go riding. So we would go horse riding, play polo, something of that sort, some activity. And then eventually when we grew up, so I figured out I wanted to play basketball and I wanted to go gym. So we were always busy whenever we had our free time, and our parents were always around us, keeping an eye, making sure that we stay on the right path. But that's not it. Your journey will start eventually as well. Imagine, so when you start to earn money, there's so much which you haven't seen in life. There will be friends, there will be all sorts of people from all walks of life. They will ask you, hey, you know what, there's nothing wrong, you will enjoy, you will have the best time of your life and whatnot. Never do that. For things you have never done while you were with your parents, please make sure that you do not do it, even when you are living on your own too as well. Today, I'm very lucky in the first place, because this lady I'm about to introduce has been working for a longer period of time in making sure that for all of those parents who are out there, that they have that their kids are safe from such menaces within the society as well. She formed a foundation which is with the name of KKAWF as well. We're very lucky, ladies and gentlemen, that we've finally been joined by, on this very important day, somebody who happens to be the founder and chairperson as well. She is Miss Christina Bon Sparling Afridi. Hello, assalamu alaikum, good morning.
Wa alaikum assalam, good morning, Shahzad, good morning.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for joining us. It's wonderful to have you. And every single year, whenever we have you over here on this day, you have a newer resolve. You're always very dedicated, very passionate, and I've never seen your resolve coming down a bit as well. It has always been going up, and you've been helping a lot of people. Thank you very much for doing that. We definitely want such members of the society. Alongside her, we've actually been joined by somebody who's going to tell us that what do we really need to do within our own education sector, and it's because of the fact that, imagine, they might have had a hard time in making sure that they're going to go convince the schools and the teachers that, hey, you know what, we're going to impart such trainings, because they're so overloaded with work of academia, and then at the same time, whatever schools do. But this is an important aspect, and nobody's been focusing on it. So we're very lucky that we've been joined by an educational consultant who happens to be Mrs. Lubna Ghani Hayauddin. Hello, assalamu alaikum, how are you? Good morning.
Walaikum assalam. Good morning, both of you.
Thank you,
It's so wonderful to be received so energetically first thing in the morning by you two.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful. And, all of a sudden, while we are on air, you're a different person totally. That's great. So let's get started. So we have given away all the facts, what we wanted to talk about. I want your perception to come out as well on this day. Please go ahead.
Well, it's a day that we mark very seriously. Obviously, our awareness and prevention program is on a daily basis, but today is the whole world thinking about it. What should we do? What's been happening? And how can we improve whatever we are doing? So it is very, you know how crucial this issue is. It's a mental issue that consequently it can really compromise the future, starting from the family nucleus to the country, the extent to the country, and of course worldwide. So we've been doing lots of, based on continues our mission, because this is a mission since that you have not been introduced to our foundation yet, but it stands on 5 pillars that primarily is drug awareness and prevention, and environment, sports, arts and culture, and civic sense. So all these elements we use to approach the youth and to engage the youth to stay away from drugs. So we have a series of events during the year, but International Day Against Drug Abuse, it's something that we really take as a mark of evaluation.
True.
And Shahzad, we are striving, but it's difficult to reach any results. That's why it's a must to develop a mechanism of self-defense, because first of all, the industry of drugs is thriving.
Right.
Yeah.
You are not going to stop that.
Right.
So unless you really create a mechanism of self-defense and you are convinced you are not going to fight, and there is this war on drugs is something that it does not exist. The war should start from within, from yourself. And so there are lots of things. It is an endless subject. So I will ask you to continue. And so, to ask whatever you want to do.
Sure.
Because there are plenty of...
Sure, and we will, but I think it's at this very time it is really very important that we bring in Mrs. Lubna as well, and it's because of the fact that you're one of those people, who are actually copying the very same concept from the European countries and brought down to Pakistan, and obviously, under the umbrella of KKAWF as well. What is it in the first place, and why do you think it is important for us to do the teacher and the student training? And do you think that it will actually help? And have you, found out that there were results where you knew that the self-defense mechanism of the students was better after the course?
So many questions
Yes.
put together. Yes. First off, the program is called Unplugged.
Yeah.
Right.
It's been adapted
Hum Saath Hain.
in Urdu, called Hum Saath Hai, with the help of the UN.
Yeah.
Right.
I've been involved in the prevention aspect since 2015, when Unplugged first came into Pakistan. The UNODC was doing the program then. Christina frog marched me and enrolled me into it, and I was hooked from the first workshop, because what it is prevention is the key. And if we prevent, we won't get to the stage where we are right now. And we're running after horses that have already left the stable, and that's good. We have to run after them. But what can we do for the future generation?
True.
So we try to target 12 to 15-year-olds.
Okay.
It's a school-based program. It's an evidence-based program. It's a scientific program. And prevention has now been declared a science for a while now.
True.
So UNODC and the EU have both made tremendous efforts to work in the field of prevention and train trainers. Last summer, we did workshops, a series of very intense workshops where it was a rat race running around, but from August to November. But what was so beautiful about that was when everybody collaborated. The Ministry of Narcotics Control, the Ministry of Education, the
OGDCL.
the OGDCL and OGTI, Mr. Tariq Qureshi, the private sector as well as the public sector, the school systems, the government schools as well as the private schools. We had the armed forces schools come in. It was such a beautiful example of everybody pooling in their resources and achieving something which literally, at times, we didn't think we'd be able to complete the courses. But the end result was we have a pool of 400 teachers from the private and the public school systems trained now in the Hum Saath Hai program,
Right.
EU certification, to impart this training further now into schools. So the next step that we're working on is working with the Ministry of Education to incorporate this in the curriculum. Now, what is it? like Christina, I can go on and on, but very simply, our school system, and this is not a criticism, it's just an observation, our school system is focusing on curriculum, which is good. Academic curriculum is a part and parcel of it. We are not equipping our children with the coping skills to deal with the curriculum and the society.
Right.
And this is what the Unplugged is. Wow. Teaching them through a series of 12 workshops how to cope with different experiences, how to think of consequences, how to do critical thinking.
Yeah, this
critical
is
thinking is the most important. How to look at another's perspective, group behavior, communication. So many things, what one says and what one's intending to say are two different things. So it is a beautiful program. And yes, there have been studies in Europe and in Africa and in South America where this program has shown to specifically decrease the positive attitude towards drugs, to decrease drinking in teens, and to delay the initiation of marijuana. So it's scientifically proven. In Pakistan, we've started this program and then it stopped because of COVID, and now we are planning to start it again, hopefully in the coming weeks, in the Mashal school system in Banigala and in the Pehli Kiran school system in Mirabadi. These are schools which have partnered with KKWF on multiple occasions. We have trained their teachers in them as well, and the program goes in English and in Urdu, so there's no reason not to pick it up. It's like we've tried to handle everything that we could.
Alhamdulillah,
that's interesting. So Ms. Christina, I would like to ask you this question. When I was coming here and I was doing research on the drug abuse, and I came across every patient has a different story, of course, right? So that child was telling, and he was not a child, actually he was a teenager, he was telling that, you know, I came from a good and a loving background, right? My parents have given me a healthy childhood. And yet he fell into a bias of the drug abuse because he felt, you know, this is the new definition of coolness, and, you know, because of the peer pressure which is coming on. And he was exactly into what we call the inverted cult of adolescence, right? So why do you think, you know, the kids are feeling that sort of void, you know, which they want to fulfill by, you know, getting into this?
If there's any void.
Well, there is.
There is a void.
Unfortunately,
that's what I'm asking.
Technology has been giving such wonderful things, but at the same time, in a humanitarian basis, had put us
That's true.
away. Because we have knowledge with no wisdom. We have knowledge with no feelings. So, and then, you know, it just becomes just automatic, that they robotize the whole thing. But one of the aspects of our prevention in education institutions and with the youth is exactly this motto that we have, that we follow, that it's our one, that say that helping the youth identify, understand, and manage emotions.
Right.
You see, this is the base of everything. First of all, with the complexity of society that we live in, we do not talk about certain things.
That's true.
So everything, even some simple things in other culture, you know, becomes a sort of a taboo here. So we are very clear how to explain to them if we're in line with your body, your mind is in line with it. I mean, that you have the kick within. How is to identify what's happened to your body during this, I call the 7 years of misery.
Right.
Adolescence is the worst time of someone's life.
Right.
And I tell them, I mean, you do not know how you're going to look like, you do not know your preferences. You have acne, you have this, you become fat, you become thin. So you're so insecure, everything is new.
True.
Right.
And not knowing what's happened with you, not knowing the havoc that the hormones are playing inside your body, your emotions come totally confused. All of a sudden you think that you are an unhappy person.
Right.
You stop to see positivity around you, and yet you are unhappy. You feel like to cry. You slam the door to your parents. You don't know why. You get suppressed yourself. The moment you have a conscience that this is happening, this is actually pain, growth pain. This is happening in your body. you start to think differently. So conscious of the development with inside your body. And how do we solve this problem? I said the body is so perfect in that God had made us so perfect that we have the kick within. I mean, if you have physical education, you stimulate your endorphin. Endorphin is the positive hormones. It's one thing with the other. Now, if you sit in your room sulking and oh God, how boring, how life doesn't work. Yeah. This is the time that your body has been formed. You have to get out and get yourself moving.
Exactly, and get yourself a reason for the kick, but not the drugs too as well. It comes from within. Thank you very much. You raised your hand.
Yes, I just wanted, when Christina said, what is the solution? I was going to say there's a chapter on emotions, on recognizing emotions.
Right.
Our youth don't even realize what their emotions are.
Right.
They haven't been taught to, and it's actually something that needs to be taught. It's a skill where you have to identify your emotion.
And I like it, and I like it. It's because of the fact that eventually it was probably, you know, when I was 24, 25 that I realized that for all of these thoughts which are coming to my mind shouldn't really be ignored, rather recognized, and I need to look for solutions. Only then you will actually or probably, you know, you will be satisfied with the kind of emotions, you know, which keeps on coming again and again, because this brain does not really at times let you sleep too as well. So it is really very important to recognize all sorts of emotions, and only then you will be in peace with yourself. This is something which is very important. Absolutely. But I have another question for you. You know, where you said, you know, there's a chapter on emotion, that's wonderful. But you said there was a chapter about critical thinking too as well. Now, let's talk about critical thinking and talk to the audiences that, God forbid, if you get a trigger of such sort, you know, your friends or family or whosoever wants to, you know, you to indulge in such an illicit activity, how do you think that we really need to critically think? Let's do an example.
Consequences. The first thing you do is you think of the consequences of
your
actions.
But because, you know, we haven't been through those consequences, it's hard to think about something which we have not lived for, right?
Yes, but you have to be able to see that any action that you're doing now, where is it going to end?
Or probably have examples from the past.
And or something that you've heard, or vicarious learning is huge. It's something that you've heard, something you've seen, you've learned.
True.
And that's what this whole book and the training is, because the mind the youth is bombarded with social media. Right. They are getting so much information, it's a sensory bombardment.
True.
So what the Unplugged does is chapter by chapter, which is actually a skill by skill, we teach them to identify the skill, see what it is. They have whatever information they get. For example, their attitude towards drugs. Now, if they have a positive attitude towards drugs, it's a normative belief that they have based it on. A normative belief is that they see a behavior and they think it's expected of them.
Yeah.
So what do? We are training the child to recognize it and work with that thought process.
True.
I just think that if I said I'm about to give a prize to anyone that would like to prove to me anything good about drug addiction. If there is someone that will prove that there is anything good on drug addiction, he'll get a prize.
Thank you very much. How much?
I mean, as much I can afford, honestly.
That's a wonderful call, and it's because of the fact that the majority of the people over here in our country would certainly feel inclined towards doing so as well. But hey, you know what? Please make sure that you come up with some valid logical reasons, because she's been working on it for years and years now as well. Very quickly, I want to ask you one more thing as well. Just for example, you know, while you were mentioning that, you know, when the study you were sharing about, you said that we got to know that there's delay in the attitude towards smoking weed too as well. Now imagine all over the world people have started to say that, hey, you know what, weed is good for cancer patients, you know, it's for their medicinal purposes and whatnot.
It has been legalized in a lot of, you know,
yes, that's what I was thinking. So how do you think that, you know, you're going to amend your courses according to how the world is behaving with these drugs as well? And hey, you know what, so I think I've proved over here that, you know, there might be a few drugs who can be good for your health too as well. Where's my price?
No, you are not going to prove.
That's a totally different issue. But what it is yes, there is a conversation going on about the fact that compartmentalizing the drugs and separating them from the really, really damaging ones to those damaging the attitude. Now, we are both working in prevention, so our thing is going to be healthy minds and healthy thinking and a healthy attitude towards it. For example, in yesterday, for the drug awareness day, we went to Shakarpadiya with 2 schools, busloads of school children, and put our hats on to coolers of liquid, and we did a lot of the many of the unplugged activities with these children, and we had these young mentors standing doing workshops and impromptu in the garden. Now, we didn't need many resources. It was very doable.
True.
There was a public space available. It just needs the initiate.
I think all you need is an intent, and Alhamdulillah, you've always been equipped with that intent as well. But very quickly towards the end, what I wanted to ask was, because this year the theme is addressing drug challenges in health and humanitarian crisis. Now, when we talk about health, we have seen how the developed countries have devised a system where at least, they're protecting the drug abusers from dying or overdose as well. They will limit their drug
harm
dose.
reduction.
Yeah. So don't you think that, okay, taking all of these steps, we certainly do not
Well,
want...
obviously, we cannot ignore the people that are suffering of drug addiction. But I believe that there are 2 things. Either you recover the patient, but harm reduction, it's quite a maintenance of the status. I mean, it's now, rehabilitation is something serious. You want to get rid of it.
True.
So I am very skeptical regarding to this harm reduction.
Okay.
It's there. It's part of the world. I mean, where we go, and the UNODC agrees that has to be of a needle exchange and things like that. So I am positive directed to rehabilitation. This chapter of harm reduction, I do not agree very much.
All right.
But it's there, and if whoever wants to apply is there. But the main focus should be prevention. There is no other thing. Prevention in schools, prevention everywhere. Shehzad, my thing is that we, as a community citizen, we live in a society. Your son, your daughter, their daughter, they are my sons too. True. So I should be looking after everyone, my neighbor's son. These are all my responsibility. Share responsibility. We have too many tragic stories to tell. Yesterday I was with someone that said, well, whenever you want me to talk, I'll talk about heroin because I've been in the down the drain and I lost 4 friends. So many stories, daily tragedies we have. We have to stop. And there is one thing. If there is no drug, there is no addiction. Where you're going to get them? So there are 2 sectors that we really have to look very seriously at.
And thank you very much for saying that. But thank you very much, Ms. Christina, for being with us. It was lovely to be in conversation with you because, this is how we create a ripple effect. You throw a pebble into the water, the waves start coming back to you. And this is why we always here, and we will always make sure that we raise our concerns for our future generations, because the illicit drug abuse and trafficking day, ladies and gentlemen, was yesterday, but it was important for us to kind of observe it. Thank you very much, Mrs. Lubna, as well. Mrs. Lubna, thank you very much for being with us. For everybody who's out there, ladies and gentlemen, with that, we're actually going to head out towards a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the psychological aspect of it. What kind of a kick does your brain give you when, God forbid, you are into drug abuse as well, and how to get rid of that, how to have self-control, how to make sure that you yourself are going to leave it. And obviously it is a very holistic and inclusive process. Everybody needs to come together. Every other person who's directly or indirectly involved with you needs to come down, make sure they sit down with you, counsel you if you need that. And there are different things. But yes, obviously we will have a professional in the next segment. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back because it's a good morning. Only if you're not on drugs.
Welcome back. And earlier on, we were talking about the drug abuse, and Shahzad mentioned that now we are going to talk about the psychological effects of the drug abuse, and how it is very important to have safe spaces, where we allow our kids to have that sort of catharsis for their emotions, and to have a really good conversation with their parents, because I think the impasse, the block in the conversation with their parents actually, pushes the kid away, and this is where they fell into this bias of the drug abuse. And with more in that, we are going to introduce our guest. We have a lovely guest with us who happens to be Dr. Uzma
from my university, yes.
Masroor, yes. And she happens to be the head of the psychology department at the Air University.
Yes.
And thank you so much, and assalamu alaikum for coming to our show.
Thank you very much for joining us, ma'am. Once again, I'm always super proud whenever I get guests from my university, and it's more very often too as well.
Right.
But now the sole motive is to kind of talk about how we kind of come back of that drug addiction. So we've talked about how people get into it, what are the stats and the figures. Because most of the time I've seen people will have schizophrenia, people will have anxiety, people will get panic attacks. I mean, people who are on drugs, that's what I'm talking about, So you never know what people are going through, what their journeys might be like, but this is what my research tells me as well. And then people will be in doubt, somebody's chasing them, and different problems. They will have visuals, and
I'll be talking.
I don't know how do we really put into a very scientific manner or term as well, but I've used all of what I learned as well. So now imagine to help somebody whose brain is not allowing him or her to think the proper way or the way we think.
Of course.
How do you think that we can bring down, because talking will never work. It has to be some sort of therapy. It needs to be
And also,
something.
the entire family is involved, because, if there's one person who is a drug addict, it's going to affect the entire family, right?
True.
How do we bring the family into that equation, without actually, tantalizing it with the stigma that is attached with the, the rehabilitation process, that he's a druggie or stuff like that.
Okay, thank you. Now let me rephrase the whole scenario.
Right.
We were talking about, there are causes and there are effects. So we have been already talking about the causes since morning. I was listening to this talk, and adequately it was mentioned what are the causes, what are the reasons. So when we come towards the effects side, then we have two types of consequences. One type of consequences are related to the direct effects of the drugs themselves. Like we have different natures available in market, and people utilize whatever they get. So these drugs, they have their own effects. As you are talking about, we are seeing things which are not there. So that means hallucination, we have different delusions, we have other aspects. It could be related to any sort of mental disorder that you can name it to. And then the other aspect is, the second part is basically the consequences which are psychosocial in nature.
Right.
Because it starts from the stigmatization right from the beginning. It is starting from that point, and now this is going on throughout the life. Right. Because the person who is unable to get along with their life activities, to get along with the people around, they are unable to interact effectively with their family members, and they unfortunately are not able to continue with either it is education or their job prospects. And their physical health is also affected. So there are a lot of effects we can talk about, but then when we come to the prevention of that, you rightly mentioned that this is the family that we take into confidence in the first place. We need to give the awareness to the family, like how can they, bring sort of positive change in their family, so somebody does not opt for it, because this is the initial stage when somebody starts thinking about that, and it starts from from the company. Usually in my experience, I have observed there has nothing been very drastically wrong with an individual who went for this drug, but it is actually just normal circumstances, or it is just the company out of which they learned something. Maybe the friends are together, or they are preparing for something. As we know, currently we are also offering people the group projects and etc. So they have to interact with each other. Right. Someone cannot stay isolated. Right. So if one person or one member of the group has such sort of effects, he can easily manipulate the rest of the group as well. Right. So it starts from here, and it is very benign in nature. Nobody can even think of, sometimes they start with enhancing their performance simply.
Right.
And then it starts to sabotage somebody's life and, you know, hindering the normal processes. So
And this is something which I would love to kind of add over here, and that is that I've seen people doing that too as well. For example, the use of Ritalin.
exactly.
So what they do is that just because they had to prepare for their
Active,
exams,
you know,
they
staying
would
up,
just keep on taking that as well.
staying up for the whole night, you know, keeping your mind alert and, you know, what can I say?
I don't know whether
but
it
this
even
is
helps or not. I think it's just somebody saying that, you know, oh, this capsule
And
will
you
help
know,
you do this.
Exactly, and this is what happens. Again, the ma'am already sitting, she was talking about the endorphins, the positive emotions, and when you touch the peak of those emotions, then nothing settles later on. Nothing you can, you know, I mean, nothing can provide you this level of satisfaction, ecstasy, sort of. So I think this is, it has to start from the family, as I mentioned, and then I always talk about the different behaviors in a family. For example, we all have family members, we are sitting together, eating together, and you know, this coherence, this cohesion inside a family can be helpful. You know, a very, you know, precise observation from the parent side can prevent a child, because such sort of deviated behavior, some sort of, you know, something abnormal in somebody's behavior can easily be observable. So it starts from here, actually.
Right. Okay. So thank you so much, Dr. Uzma, for talking about this. And I do believe that, you know, universities at the moment are the hotbed of the drug addiction, right? There are a lot of people, you know, who are not druggies, but when they go to university, because of the peer pressure, because of, you know, of looking cool,
they cannot not go into this. This is what I have learned, you know, while talking to these students.
It's always your choice. But do you feel that, you know, character building, which should be very essential pillar of our education system, is in its very essence, it's not there in our syllabus? And do you feel that it needs to be taught on the university level, or maybe, you know, that the personality has developed so much, you know, that, you know, coming to university cannot help it? You know, what's your opinion on that?
We have been talking about this, you know, inculcation of such sort of skills in academia, curriculum, as we have been discussing early morning as well. So this is crucially important now, because the education right from the beginning should be provided with respect to all medical grounds, with respect to psychosocial factors. One should be given this sort of education. This is very important. And the second thing is the factor of responsibility has to be there in an individual, because people who are students who are coming to universities, you know, it is not very easy to get university education right now. So you know, they should be educated like how they are going to dump their life into something that would never pay anything off to their parents as well.
Right, and especially, you know, the kids who are living in the hostels, you know, they're far away from their families, and I think they're more able to shield, you know,
they get a hall pass.
What I was telling earlier, like, it is just a stress, a little bit of stress. Of course, when you are getting this much ecstasy or this much, you know, resources available for you by using something very simple and very small amount, then how would somebody go and struggle for something that he has to? You know, this is kind of shortcut people adopt. And I think prevention, again, prevention, and we have been talking about that. But yes, there are very strong effects later on, because it is very difficult for a person to come back to normal life if he has not been provided proper treatment.
And there are two things which I would love to add over here, and that is, number one, obviously, you know, when you're a university student, you're young, budding, and you certainly do not feel that impact on your health too as well.
Exactly.
You know, the next day you're working perfectly well as well, and you're like, hey, you know what, we had a good time last night. You know, so something of that sort. But eventually, you know, once you enter your late 30s or 40s, you know, you start to have problem with your heart. You will start to feel that, hey, you know what, I shouldn't have done it. And that's going to be of no point even back then as well. Now, number two, what I want you to talk about, since we're talking about universities and you, alhamdulillah, happen to be the chair of the psychological department too as well. What I wanted to ask was that, imagine, so since I have studied in a university, once in 365 days, we only had 5 days sports week, right? Imagine the rest of the days we are making assignments, the rest of the days we are walking into classrooms, making projects, but I don't know, there's so much work and there's so much pressure. Oh, uska chauka GPA aa gaya. You know, there's going 4 GPA, you know, I really need to prepare, otherwise my university is going to drop me out, you know, God forbid if I fail. So there's so much pressure, the kids really want to get away from that. And in just that getaway, that's what they find for themselves, and that's horrible. Number one. Number two. Number three, for anybody to be studying in any institution, for anybody working in any office, I think twice annually or biannually, we really need to get the drug test done. All students, everybody. I think everybody needs to come back on this,
very
and then
good point, yes.
we certainly can kind of work towards not that you know, God forbid, if somebody's positive with it, we throw them out of the university or their jobs, but at least we know, hey, you know what, that's where the problem is. Do you recommend that?
Yes, I do. This is quite heart-touching to me. I think this is my pressing point. Because the stress we have been seeing in academia now, it is really heartbreaking.
much, yeah.
Because
Even
I
for the
myself
teachers?
as a teacher, because there are very short, duration of time, given time slots, and then you have to, more and more into it. And these, I think it has to looked into, because the reason being is, like, most of the people, most of the students who are coming from the universities, they are under stress. They are unable to enjoy their life even. They are unable to sit with their friends in a happy manner, because they have to do something. We remember in our students' life, like, we used to see people who were working somewhere, and we used to think, if we are students, kal ko hame bhi karna hoga. But those who are already students, they are so much occupied. I cannot ask my children to do something for me, because they have their schedule back to back.
And in addition to that, imagine
this
that
is huge stress, and I think it has to be looked into.
Even just going to a registrar's office in a university is a lot of problem. He will give you 20-30 papers to go to the photocopier, get them photocopied, come to me. Why are you there in the first place? You're supposed to do it for us. We are paying you so much money. So there's a lot of pressure. Obviously, we've recognized that. So very quickly, solutions.
Yeah, solution first, the prevention part. I think I would stress on this part that we should have the families who should already have information, and we can provide this type of family interaction that somebody can be easily picked up and observed immediately after some suspiciousness occurs. And later on, when it happens, then we have to have some measures that somebody, without stigmatizing, as you mentioned, drug test, etc., that we can prevent someone from going into some point where they are unable to return back. So third, we have to also see different rehabilitation services being provided, because it is too expensive for people, and it is not single, like a psychologist cannot do something, a psychiatrist cannot do something. So this is multifaceted problem, and we need a combination of different domains coming in and then curing this issue. We should not abandon a person who basically already indulged into something, but we have to bring him back to the normal life, and we all are part of this treatment, not me or someone.
Dr. Uzma, don't you think that so many people are into the drug abuse? If you talk about having a drug test, I think this was the solution that was proposed, and it had faced a massive backlash, because so many people were into it, and the stigma and the shame that was attached to that. So the fans,
Even athletes these days.
I think it is to be done systematically, not abruptly, but systematically. People should be informed, like, this is this much time you have, just get rid of this or do something about that. Because after 6 months, or after 1 year, we are going to start something like that. Although it is very difficult.
Or deduct 20% salary. If your drug test is positive, we are going to deduct 20% of your salary. But it needs to be real, because the people might be on medication, there might be so many different things, you cannot put everybody in the same box.
This has to be a proper system, as I said, not abruptly and immediately, but then you have to devise something like that.
Exactly. But thank you very much, Dr. Saiba, for being with us. It was lovely to be in conversation. And yes, that's my advice, because I've said that, may it be Maulvi Saab from the mosque, may it be your chachu, may it be your uncles, may it be your family, the doctors, everybody needs to come together, sit down, talk, have a conversation, do not hide it. And I think that from the parents' perspective, what I would really want to suggest to the parents is that, God forbid, if you even figure it out that there's something wrong, please make sure that you're not harsh on the kid, because then he's not going to be open about it. Please make sure that you talk nicely, or probably, I think this is the safest way. This is what most of the time parents do.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know what, I have been through it as well. What's the problem? Let's talk about it, and we'll sort it out together. Give them that confidence so that they're willing. I think that's one point which I will emphasize on, that they really need to be willing to get better.
We can have different forums available in universities, some counseling centers, some advice centers, where they can go and they can talk about that, how we can inform our family and what we need to do. Instead of going immediately into rehabilitation center or somewhere else, they can talk to someone. They have to have this channel. Actually.
And half of the time I do not even trust rehabilitation centers, because majority of the cases I've heard about, it's about the relapse, or probably people have bribed people within the centers too as well to get them drugs, and people have done that. And you know, God forbid if somebody needs an example of that, I can give it to you.
Right.
Please go ahead.
Right, of course, and you know, this brings us to again this point, you know, that we need to have safe spaces, you know, where kids can have catharsis about their emotions, and you know, they can tackle this menace of drug abuse, right? And Shahzad, I was reading a very nice, what do you call it, an anecdote in a book, and it said that the author said that I used to take my children when they were very young, when they were kids, to the drug rehabilitation centers, and he used to tell them, look, this is what happens, you know, when you fall into this abyss. And they had such a strong negative memory attached to the drugs that, you know, they never talked about getting into this abyss or being a druggie in that case.
Trauma.
So
Yes.
please make sure that you write to us on our Facebook page, which is with the name of
World This Morning.
on Twitter and Dailymotion
World This Morning.
without a G.
Right.
And the fabulous repeat is going to be at 10:05 tonight. And the next time, look after yourselves. 1, 2, 3. Good morning.
Morning.